And I did a survey for my book because it's about, secrets and stuff. So I did a survey of stuff like that. And again, people are not going to be totally honest because nobody trusts these quizzes, even though I couldn't see anyone's names. And one of the things I start with is looking at things that are similar. How do you define what a secret is? And you can look at what it's not and what it's similar to. And it's similar to deception, so lies. Not all secrets involve lies, but all lies in some way do involve secrets. The other thing is privacy or privacy. And what is private and what is secret? So is it, if a couple has sex, is that private or a secret? To me, that's just private, right? You expect that a couple might have sex. They're just keeping that private. It's not a big secret if it comes out. Now, ironically, if a couple never has sex, that starts to become a secret because we have societal expectations that couples have sex. So if they don't, we get this feeling, probably wrongly, that something must be wrong because of our societal expectations. So it's this really fascinating thing, like picking your nose. I love that one because my survey showed that like 97% of people feel they do it frequently. So the fact that you do it should just be a private matter, not something that's secret, not something that if it comes out that you do it, it's incredibly embarrassing. And yet we all act like nobody does it, like it's this horrible thing. And there was a football manager of Germany, the manager or coach who got caught during a match, like on the side, he was picking his nose and eating the stuff. And then he was also, unfortunately, he kept putting his hands down his trousers and smelling his fingers, which was it's a bit horrible to watch. But it's so unfair on him because obviously he was so in the moment that he just forgot that cameras were everywhere. And it was a rare moment, a rare look into it. If you want to see authenticity, find the German coach who did that. That is a moment where he's just being him, even with the cameras on him. So yeah, it's a shame that we all portray this sort of fake us to the world because it means that when we are picking our noses at home, when we are doing embarrassing things, we feel like no one else is, and we feel a lot of shame, and that's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a perfect example. And I kind of was like a little embarrassed for that guy when you were talking about it, not necessarily because of what he did necessarily, but because like I know exactly what he must have experienced from, letting his guard down in those moments to like, to do that on camera and then the backlash to that. And probably what he still experiences today with those videos being on the internet and living forever, right? It's like,
Awful.
I mean, I'm fully well aware every time I do a video, and I'm obviously not the most famous person in the world, and I'm not on like an international sports screen, but I'm fully well aware of every time I say something that might be like an awkward joke or anything like that, when I'm just kind of like talking off of my head, oh, that's going to get clipped out of context. Someone's going to use that against me later. Yeah. And it's like, it really does impact how you express yourself and whether or not you're fully able to step into who you are. And I've done this stream before where I talk about like when I joined the libertarians and started immersing myself in libertarian culture, it actually made me more creative than I've ever been in my life, because within libertarian culture, there's just not as much direct judgment of that stuff, at least in what I experienced in New Hampshire. So you have all these kind of like weird, awkward, creative people that are all doing different things and all having these conversations that just don't take place in like Republican cultures or Democrat cultures or like normal society, but they do take place in these like libertarian clubs and these libertarian gatherings. And so for me, that was like a really like a community that I felt like brought out the weirder side of me. And then when I start to express some of those things on the internet, it's instantly clipped out of context and taken and twisted by people who don't like me because I, didn't speak their Republican talking points or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just living an authentic human experience, man. I just had a thought off the cuff on a live stream and you guys are turning this into something it's not. And it's really aggravating when those things happen.
Yeah, that is difficult. And you and I both delve into really controversial terrain sometimes. I think part of why we do this job is we're probably those people. I don't know. I mean, are you like this, that I'm not an extrovert because I don't like going out in big groups, but if I'm with one or two friends, by the end of the night I start to sense that they might be quite tired and ready to go home, and I'm just like fully on like a subject, and as controversial as it can be,
No, I definitely think that's true, and I'm an introvert as well. I cannot be around big crowds of people, or even just like several people for an extended period of time. But I definitely find that it makes people what I found is that like if I'm acting like I would in like a libertarian clubhouse around like people who are more Republican and conservative, they are visibly uncomfortable. And I'm like, why is it okay to do that over here and not over here? And why, like, what about the development of people allowed something to be so completely socially acceptable and fine, and not even just socially acceptable, but like lifted up and said like, this is awesome in this one culture, but when you interact with these people over here, it is like, no, we don't do that, we don't say that. It's just a really weird thing.
Yeah. Well, it just shows what nonsense everything is. Like, a lot of societal norms are really, really subjective, and they'll be completely different. But that's also why I get wound up with some people from different cultures where like spitting is more allowed, because I was brought up with this sense of like no spitting on the floor, you know, that kind of thing. And it offends me. And some of these societal norms, I think I'm right in saying, because I'm not a scientist here, but I wrote an article about offense and the things that offend us and are revolting to us. And like with language, for example, I think it's on the, I don't know which side it is, but let's say it's the left side of your brain is where language is. But swear words are on the right side of your brain. They're totally different. Even though it's still language, they're on the other side of your brain, because it's where the offense bit is. It's where you get like, oh, I don't like that. And those things get ingrained into us from a young age. And I imagine that's not just swear words. Obviously, you live in a society right now where saying certain swear words is bad. And it gives you, but it could be anything. That some sort of, you know, spitting will do that, will have the same effect. If I see someone spit on the floor, it will have that effect that some people will get when they hear a bad swear word. And it's really interesting seeing how swear words change, firstly, depending on what country you're in, what kind of swear words they are. But also over the last few hundred years, you can track how offensive words have changed with society. So you can go from, I guess a few hundred years ago, it was religious words. So stuff like damn and hell and heck and eternal damnation and all that. And you've got these really weird, particularly Americanisms that they used in Rugrats. So carnation or something that the grandpa used to say. And that was the worst thing you could say. And it sounds silly to us now, but at that time, it would have been, you know, like saying the N-word or something to them. That's how that would have felt. And then as society sort of got a little bit less religious focused, they moved on to the body. That was sort of the Victorian Puritanism, you know, this whole thing of like a maiden must be a virgin and sex and, you know, talking about sex and all that kind of stuff. So you moved on to all these bodily words, just talking about sex or saying, you know, fuck, shit, ass, cunt, whatever. And so I'm wary of your YouTube channel being taken.
That's okay. I've said cunt before on my channel. It's fine.
Good. Because cunt is the one that's still, there's the one bodily word that stayed, and there's a reason for that. Because the next thing that came from the body, now people don't care about fuck and shit. They don't care. They pretend they do. No one cares anymore. We moved on to identity words. Identity became the thing that was the unsayable words. And the reason cunt is a bad one is because, particularly in the States, it's linked to misogyny. It's supposed to be. So it's against women. It's an identity word. In the UK, you use it to describe a man, and that's why it's allowed here. You can use anyone. It's, you know, I would just say to a friend, yo, you fucking cunt, like all the time. But I probably wouldn't say it to a woman because I'd be wary of that potential, you know, misinterpretation or whatever. But you know, if you think about the words you really can't say today, they're all identity groups. The F word for gay people and the N word. There are a couple of Jewish equivalents. There are other ones for Muslims and things. These are the unsayable words. The interesting thing about it is, as you're saying before about like what is offensive or whatever, it changes depending on where you are, and it will change again. And I spoke to John McWhorter, who's a linguist, sort of anti-woke linguist, on my channel ages ago. And I said, what do you think's next? And he said, you never know. We won't know what's going to be the next thing in 50 years. But for example, it could be anything. It could be like related to climate change. You could call someone a windmill or something, and like people will get upset. So it's fascinating to see where this is going to go. But it's also maybe a reason to sometimes just like take ourselves a little less seriously, not just about offensive words, but about societal norms and about, you know, transgressing them and doing things that are silly and embarrassing and rude, because in 50 years' time, that will just be a normal thing to do, or it might not, you know?